We need a new system. We need a new society. We need to demand that which may have sounded impossible even a few weeks ago, but is not only realizable, but an imperative necessity. Donald Trump, speaking alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, said that the United States will take control of Gaza, that the United States will own Gaza, and that the 2 million Palestinian people living in Gaza must leave and they will be replaced by other people. Welcome to the Socialist Program. I'm your host, Brian Becker. Today we're talking with Miko Peled. Miko is a human rights activist. He is the author of The Story of the Holy Land Foundation 5. He's the author of The General's Son, A Journey of an Israeli in Palestine. You can find all of his books, his works, his podcast at mikopeled.com. Miko, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Miko, each day in the past week, there's another announcement either from Trump himself or from the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi, who said she's now forming a task force to hunt down those involved in the crimes of Hamas internationally and domestically, like another sort of big witch hunt against people who are in solidarity with Palestine. I want to talk about some of that, but let's get started with the story of Gaza. I have a clip right now. I want to play it. It's Donald Trump talking about how the U.S. is going to basically take control of Gaza, and I want to get your thoughts. Let's listen.
The only reason the Palestinians want to go back to Gaza is they have no alternative. It's right now a demolition site. This is just a demolition site. Virtually every building is down. They're living under fallen concrete that's very dangerous and very precarious. They instead can occupy all of a beautiful area with homes and safety, and they can live out their lives in peace and harmony instead of having to go back and do it again. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different.
The people of the area, Miko, don't include the Palestinians who live there. They have to leave. Anyway, that whole clip is surreal. Anyway, go ahead.
It is surreal. It is surreal. The people of the area, well, he's getting rid of 2 billion of the people of the area. So what people? And where's this great place that they're all going to go? I mean, where's this wonderful place with the homes where they can live and live in prosperity? I mean, it is surreal. But when you think about it kind of historically, the empire supporting the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in favor of the Zionists is not new. We've seen this before. This has been going on for a very long time. He gives it an edge, obviously, because of the insane way that he expresses it and the fact that he expresses it so explicitly and bluntly. But this is not new. The empires have allowed the Zionists to expel Palestinians, and they allowed the ethnic cleansing to begin in 1948 of Palestine, and they never stopped allowing it. So it's really nothing new. It's just maybe an amplification at this moment. And again, this surreal expression of how he's describing what's going to happen. And the bottom line is it's not going to happen. So in other words, there's no way in hell that's going to happen. He can't do it. Nobody can do it. I've been watching video clips because I went to bed after I saw that a couple of nights ago, and it was surreal, but it was depressing. I mean, this union between those two horrible men. And then I woke up the next morning and I'm seeing all these videos coming out of Gaza, just Palestinians in the street posting things, and they're making fun of him. They're calling him Trumpoline, and this guy Trumpoline, what the hell? He thinks he can get us out? Does he know what we've been through? Does he know who we are? Come and get us. So Palestinians in Gaza, every kid in Gaza realizes that this is absurd, that it's not going to happen. And now we'll have to wait and see what they're going to do with this. I think even Netanyahu seemed a little surprised, but he said, we're going to take over Gaza. We're going to own it. I don't think that's what Netanyahu had in mind. I think maybe that was a little ad-libbing there on behalf of Trump. But it's not going to happen. I think that's the bottom line.
The the absurdity of the statement, surreal, absurd, bizarre, so many good adjectives fit here. But he was like talking about Gaza as a demolition site with unexploded ordnance standing next to Netanyahu. It's kind of like this just happened. It just somehow it turned into a demolition site, Miko. It's like,
It's active.
yeah, it's terrible, but they have to leave. And here's Netanyahu, like, he did all that. They did that. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it just all came down from the heavens. One day it became a demolition site, and so we have to leave the Palestinians, because if they get rid of the Palestinians and they can't come back, because if they come back, it's going to happen again. Why is it going to happen again? Why should it happen again? Why should they leave? And what is infuriating is the journalists in the room didn't ask the tough questions. They didn't say, well, the guy standing next to you is the guy in charge. Why is he not taking care of it? Why is he still doing it? Why is he not taking care of the people that he's been occupying all these years? Why are you letting him get away with it? Why are you punishing the people who have been suffering as a result of this genocide? Why are the victims of the genocide being thrown out? This is insane. It wasn't always a horrible place. Gaza was a beautiful place. Gaza was known for beautiful dunes and, citrus orchards and the smell of citrus flowers. And so, I mean, it was a beautiful place. The beaches, the seafood, that's what Gaza was always known for. And then the Zionists came, and in 1948, it became a big concentration camp. But that's not what that area was known for up until 1948. And of course, it got progressively worse since. So the what's infuriating to me is the fact that none of the journalists stood up and said, excuse me, it was a paradise. This man and his predecessors destroyed it. Why are we punishing the Palestinians? Why is it the Palestinians' fault? And how the hell do you intend to take out 2 million people from their homes, from their land?
Yeah, and speaking of the media coverage, I'm reading all the corporate-owned mainstream media here, and they're all a little bit surprised by Trump because he's so transactional and so open and so brazen. But the tone and the story in the media really is, this isn't a good idea, or it's probably not a good idea, but it's kind of also like in the American media, kind of like, yeah, it's bad, but it may happen. There's no emotive like element of condemnation. It's all kind of this clinical, geostrategic, like, will it work? Will it be good for U.S. relations in the Middle East? How will it impact the efforts to normalize relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia? Just completely clinical. And now you have the Department of Justice under Pam Bondi saying, yeah, we're going to prosecute. We're creating a task force to investigate and prosecute the crimes of Hamas. I mean, Hamas isn't in the United States. Hamas is in Gaza. But what is in the United States is millions of people who have become active in support of the Palestinians. And I think the Trump administration, at the same time as it's carrying out this move to ethnically cleanse Gaza, is also indicating that they want to crush the Palestinian solidarity movement in the United States because it represents a sea change in American public opinion. That may happen. There may be a big attack on the Palestinian solidarity movement, but that movement, just like the people in Gaza, that's not going away. Anyway, your thoughts?
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's not going away. Bring it on. It's just like the people in Gaza are saying, "Are you out of your mind? You know who we are. You're going to come for us." We're looking at campuses. We're looking at students. We're looking at, just last, when it was a couple of months ago, I was at a university in Southern California that SJP was banned as a result of the encampment. And they invited me to speak, and I'm there, and we're walking from the parking lots to the venue. And this 20-year-old girl student is like, big smile on her face. She goes, we know we're banned, and we're not supposed to do this. And we can't get a hall, and we can't get funding, and we can't organize, and we can't do anything. I said, so where are we going? She goes, well, we got a hall because we have friends that, work in a particular building, and they got us the hall. We got food because we have friends that work in one of the restaurants on campus. We got the word out through our network, and they had a huge event. The place was packed. All of this under the noses of the administration, which are terrible. And they're not going away. They're not going to surrender. They're not going to stop. It's not going away. There's nothing, none of these draconian laws, none of these draconian policies, none of these racists who are in power are going to shut down this movement. There's nothing they can do, but they're going to keep trying. I mean, obviously they're going to keep trying, just like Israel is continuing what it's doing in Gaza and other parts of Palestine. They're not going, this is a tough battle. But I know that, like you said, the people in Gaza are not going to stop, and the students and young people and older people too, like you and me. I mean, none of us are going to stop. The struggle is going to go on until Palestine is free and the Zionist regime collapses. There's no other way.
Miko, I want you to talk about, especially if there will be a lot of new people who have never seen this show, who may never have heard you speak before, who don't know your own story. And I think it's extremely important because, again, most people sadly still get their information from the corporate-owned media. Talk about the mood inside of Israel, how Israel is viewing, or the Israeli society is viewing what happened over the past 15 months, how Israel is viewing the ceasefire, how Israel views Trump. Do they actually think that there can be a cleansing? I saw a poll in an Israeli media that said something like 97% of the people in Israel thought Trump's position was a good one about the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. Anyway, you come from Israeli society. Talk about Israeli society and what the mood is inside, and what's been, if you're thinking about like what's going on inside Israeli body politic and in Israeli society now compared to, say, October 6th, 2023, the day before October 7th.
Wow. So I'll start with what you said in the beginning. I'm not surprised that 97% of Israelis think that the Trump idea is a good idea. This is something that was always seen as the best outcome. The argument was, is it doable? Is it not doable? What's the cost? The hostages and that sort of thing. And the people who call for the complete elimination of the Palestinians through what they called voluntary migration are now just they're in heaven. Ben Gvir, who was a former he's a convicted terrorist, Jewish terrorist, convicted by Israel. He was so bad. He can't stop posting. I follow him, and his post every single day is like so happy. He says, look, you said I was wrong. Now look, the president of the United States publicly in the Oval Office is saying what I've been saying. Let's do this now. So this group of gangsters, these right-wing, racist gangsters are very, very happy. Israeli society, by and large, is quite happy. The discourse is the support for the genocide is obvious. It goes without saying. The support for the idea that you can wake up one morning there'll be no Palestinians is the ideal. The questions is cost, is it doable, how doable, and so on. And there's a sense of happiness. Now, what's interesting is there's a lot of reflection, so to speak, in Israeli society, in the military. What happened? How did October 7th happen? Why did it happen? Where did we go wrong? And, people are resigning from the military. I mean, there's all this demand for an inquiry and so on. They were convinced that the Gazans were incapable and wouldn't dare. They're incapable and they wouldn't dare. Very similar to what happened in, 50 years before that, almost exactly 50 years before that, 1973. The Arabs wouldn't dare. I mean, and they're incapable. And look how we defeated them easily, before that. And suddenly they dared. And not only did they dare, they were successful. And not only were they successful, but like you said the other day, the fighting spirit has not been broken. Their spirit at all hasn't been broken. People in Gaza are now cleaning up. And it's driving people crazy, both on the street and in the media and the politicians. When you see the arguments, just crazy vitriol inside the Knesset. It's driving them crazy to see the Palestinian show of force after the ceasefire. This show of force of Palestinian fighters and police and order, and they're out there and they're looking smart with their uniforms, and they've got, many of them are holding Israeli made guns that they took from Israeli soldiers. And to see the celebrations when the prisoners are coming out, one reporter even said, I wish they all choke on their sweets, because when the prisoners come out, people come out with sweets to give them sweets. It's driving them mad. It's just the vitriol, the desire to see them all die and go away is just so strong. It's really horrifying to see and to read, and I follow it every day throughout the day to see what they're saying. And Trump just again gave Netanyahu a gift that nobody else ever imagined Netanyahu would receive. It's not unsimilar to when he was in his previous administration, he recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. That was a dream that no prime minister ever thought he would get. It's a huge political gift. It's absurd. It's a crazy thing to do, but from every perspective, because Jerusalem has a unique status internationally. But he did it, and they put a sign there that says the embassy is now in Jerusalem, and everybody's like, it's one of those insane relationships between Trump and Israel and Israeli society and the prime minister. But there's no question that people are very happy. That people are just, like you said here, they're just talking about kind of clinically, is it possible? How do we do it? How will it affect us? What's it going to do to us internationally? But the desire to see it happen is very, very strong.
Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, earlier, this idea of taking over Gaza, of ethnically cleansing Gaza, of making it the Riviera of the area, that it could be a great, like Trump could build casinos there, or, like the ones that he built in Atlantic City, the ones that went bankrupt, that he could do all that. Here's another little clip. It's Jared Kushner. Again, it's mind-blowing that this is tolerable in the U.S. media, that the people in the media themselves are not howling about this. Listen to Jared Kushner.
In Gaza's waterfront property, it could be very valuable to, if people would focus on kind of building up livelihoods. You think about all the money that's gone into this tunnel network and into all the munitions. If that would have gone into education or innovation, what could have been done? And so I think that it's a little bit of an unfortunate situation there. But I think from Israel's perspective, I would do my best to move the people out and then clean it up.
Yeah, let's move them out, Miko. Jared Kushner, the Kushner family, big real estate moguls. Anyway, this isn't being met by howls from the media. I mean, can you imagine this if it was, say, people in the United States? Let's move those people out and let these billionaires take it over. Anyway, crazy.
Gaza was it wasn't a Riviera. I mean, it's different. It's not beaches, people walking around, women walking around topless, but it was beautiful. It was beautiful. The beaches, the homes, the beautiful homes, the restaurants, the hotels. It was beautiful. The reason it stopped being beautiful is because Israel destroyed it. It was beautiful. It was exactly what he was saying. Not in the Western, not in the way of Western imagination operates. Imagine the Riviera again with women in bikinis, because this is a Muslim country mostly and a little more conservative. But it was beautiful. It was known for its beauty. But what they want to do is not, and besides, if you want to make it beautiful, if you want to invest in it and you want to build hotels, whatever the hell, why get rid of the people who live there? Why can't they enjoy it? But this is, again, it's part of the exact same, the permission or the license that empires gave the Zionists to get rid of Palestinians and build for Jews only. I mean, that's what all Israel is about. Somebody was asking me yesterday about about settlements, and the issue of settlements. Okay, what do you mean the issue of settlements? All of Israel is settlements. Israel is a project of settlements built for Jews only at the expense of Palestinians. So there's nothing new about this. It's just people's attention are now on Gaza and the removal today of 2 million people. The discussion of Actually, the ethnic cleansing of 2 million people is, some people think twice before they want to really execute it. But that's exactly what the history of Palestine has been since the Zionists came, about the removal of the Palestinians and building cities. But, Palestine had cities. They had people enjoying the cities. Jaffa was a major cultural center of the entire region of the Middle East. Haifa was a major port. All these cities were already there. Jerusalem, all these places have a history, had a culture, had people living in them. Palestine, people go back to this nonsense, and I think this is, again, another iteration of that, how the Jews came and made the desert bloom and took all this destruction and made it beautiful. It was beautiful. They destroyed it. It was beautiful. They stole a country. They didn't make the desert bloom. They stole a country that was in full bloom, and then they called it their own. I mean, the cities were there. There's another book that just came out on this. One came out a few years ago about the rights of Palestinian refugees in international law, and another book just came out just now called Stolen Land. And it talks about, all the things that were stolen. Entire cities were stolen. Bank accounts, money from people's bank accounts were stolen. Cars, there were cars in the streets. There were plazas. There were, theaters. Everything was there. Hospitals, schools. But the idea that you take it from the people that are enjoying it because they're the wrong people. And again, it goes back to this phrase, which was initially a Christian Zionist phrase, and the Jewish Zionists took it, which is that it's a land without a people for a people without a land. Everybody knew there were people there. It's just that they were the wrong people. The problem is not the fact that Gaza is broken or destroyed, it's the problem is that the people that are enjoying Gaza are the wrong people. So we have to remove them and allow these Jews to come in, or the Europeans to come in and enjoy it and take care of it. So it's really a continuation of what Zionism was from the very beginning, of what Israel was all about from the very beginning. The reason it's shocking is because the level of the violence and the level of the intensity of what is happening in Gaza right now is shocking. But it's really exactly the continuation of what's been going on for almost 100 years now.
You may have seen this other clip I'm going to play. It's Harry Truman. It's from the Truman Library. He's reflecting on 1948, what the Palestinians call the Nakba, when Israel is established. The U.S. ruling class in the beginning, Miko, had sort of there was a kind of a division between the pro-Israeli wing and what were called the Arabists within the U.S. State Department and others who felt like, why are we from a geostrategic point of view siding with this small Jewish nation when it's going to be treated as sort of an incursion by colonialism in the Arab world, and there's hundreds of millions of Arabs? Like, it doesn't make sense to just throw in with Israel. So for a while, there was a real kind of a division. In fact, in 1956, when Israel and Britain and France invaded Egypt, Eisenhower opposed the Israelis. They opposed the British and the French. So did Khrushchev, by the way. And Adlai Stevenson's campaign in 1956 condemned Eisenhower for not being pro-Israel enough. I mean, that was the Democratic Party nominee in 56. So there was a sort of a division, which doesn't really appear to exist now within the American ruling class. But here's this clip from Harry Truman talking about the establishment of Israel in 1948. And it speaks to your point, which is that what's happening now is a continuation of the Zionist project from the beginning, and it was well understood, including by Harry Truman. Let's listen.
We had several other people in the country, even among the Jews, the Zionists particularly, who were against anything that was to be done if they couldn't have the whole of Palestine and everything handed to them on a silver plate so they wouldn't have to do anything. It couldn't be done. We had to take it in small doses. You can't move 5 or 6 million people out of a country and fill it up with 5 or 6 million more and expect both sets of them to be pleased.
Well, that's kind of a ridiculous end statement there. But again, this is the Truman administration talking about ethnically cleansing Palestine. I mean, the essence of that message is the Zionists wanted it all on what he calls on a silver platter, but it was going to have to be done in installments because it was practically hard. Anyway, go ahead.
I like the map that was behind it because it said Palestine.
Yeah.
Well, so anybody who says that there was no Palestine, there was no such thing as Palestine, well, he's standing in front of a map where it says Palestine behind him. There's no Israel there. The fact that this is nothing new is I think a reality. That's any Palestinian that will tell you that. This is what they've been putting up with, and been subjected to for almost 100 years now. And I think you have to hand it, as much as I hate to say this, you have to hand it to the Zionists. They did a really good job. I mean, you're right. It makes no sense to support this Israel project when you have all these other countries and they could be your allies. I mean, why would Egypt be less of an ally than the Zionist state? I mean, what is the logic behind it? And they somehow managed to, through, again, over more than 100 years now of investing, lobbying, convincing, educating, interfering in every aspect of life to make it clear that we are on the side of the Jews, we are on the side of Israel, 100%. And you see it in education, you see it in, you see it in local elections, you see it in culture, you see it in even philanthropy. I mean, some of the biggest philanthropists, the Jewish philanthropists around the country here, are Zionists. So, I remember being, in San Diego, the Jacobs family, they saved the symphony and they built libraries and schools, and they're Zionists. Who's going to tell them, it's a family of Sarah Jacobs, who's now in Congress. Who's going to tell them that Zionism is bad? Who's going to go against them on the issue of Israel when they've done so much, when they're such wonderful people and they're such contributors to the community? So even in philanthropy, they managed to have this Zionist influence really, really powerful. But that's how they've done it. And they've managed to, through all these years, convince the powers that be and convince the people in the streets and convince the media and on that this is the way things should be. And nobody asks, and nobody in the media asks, and nobody in the streets says, why? Why is this okay? Why do we need this ally there? What's wrong with, if a free Palestine is not going to be a good ally? Palestinians would not have been good allies. I mean, it makes no sense. Except that, half the Jews who live there now, look like you and me, and they're white. And so maybe that element exists as well. But it makes no strategic sense. It makes no economic sense. And morally, it's deplorable. I mean, it's grotesque. What's being done to Palestinians for over 100 years is grotesque. And the fact that it is still continuing. And again, I'll go back to the journalists that were in that room when Trump made that announcement. And he wasn't challenged. And like you said, the man who was responsible for the demolition site, not to mention who knows how many deaths, the estimates are around 200,000. What about that? That's not even being challenged. And the guy responsible was standing right there. And these journalists, what are they doing? Why? How could they not ask the question? How can they not push them on these issues? To me, again, that's the most frustrating and enraging thing. The fact that these two guys talk the way they do, I think, is to be expected. But the fact that they're not challenged by the media is, I think, unforgivable.
Well, you pay careful attention to the media and to American politics. Why do you think that is?
Again, the Zionists do a really good job in making sure that their voice is heard and their influence is that their influence is above all else. I mean, they've been working on it very, very hard. We all know that Trump got, 100, 200 million from the Adelson family. I mean, this is they know how to play this game and win. And what's interesting also about the Zionists is that it doesn't matter how fragmented they are within. And you see the arguments and the shouting in the Knesset and on the media, in the news and all the talk shows, they are at each other's throat. The vitriol has reached heights since October 7th that have never been reached. It's always been nasty. But on the issue of the land, the issue of the Palestinians, everybody's united. And this was the same, it's exactly how it was from when the Zionist movement began early on, late 19th, early 20th century. They had their divisions, they hated each other's guts, they had different political ideologies, but on the issue of the land, the issue of the state, the issue of the Arabs, because they didn't say Palestinians, everybody was united. And that's how they succeed. And that's why they're so successful. And they know how to play the game. They know how to use the money. They know how to use the influence. They know how to use the media. And they are there. They're zealots.
I think people are also afraid. It's not just at this point being afraid of being labeled an anti-Semite or an anti-Jewish if you're pro-Palestinian. There's a price that is paid. Like if the college presidents, that ridiculous testimony from college presidents, university presidents before Congress, in front of Elise Stefanik, now U.S. ambassador to the UN, she's asking them, hey, does advocating genocide against Jews violate the norms of the university? Is that something that you're going to tolerate? And instead of them saying, well, of course we wouldn't tolerate that, but thankfully that's not an issue because the people who are supporting the end of the genocide in Gaza are not anti-Semitic. They're not using anti-Jewish propaganda. Many of them are Jewish. But instead of saying that, they hemmed and hawed. They said, well, it depends on context. And they look like fools. They couldn't answer the question of whether advocacy for genocide against Jews was good or bad. Because to do the other way would have meant they would have had to say, look, those students are actually doing something very courageous, very righteous, not anti-Semitic, but against genocide. But they were afraid to do that. And then they had their corporate lawyers preparing them for congressional testimony. Anyway, they all got fired anyway or had to resign. I mean, it's just this dead end game, but it's all premised on this kind of fear of the Zionist or U.S. government / Zionist demonization, doxing, repression, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And they did look stupid, and they were stupid, and they deserve to be fired because they had no principles. At UCLA, on the worst day of the encampment, the worst violence that the students suffered from the police and from Zionist gangsters, the entire administration with the university president were at the president's residence, just 100, 200 yards away, watching it all live. And none of them stepped out to save the students. The residence is just 200 yards from where this was taking place. They saw it happen. They saw the brutality. They saw the police brutality. They saw the brutality, and they didn't come out to stop it. I mean, how do you see your students getting beat up like this by gangsters and racists and not come out? These, it's deplorable. It's grotesque. The fact that these students were just thrown under the bus, and they continue to be thrown out of the bus, and they continue to get up and fight, and they continue. And these university presidents, I've never understood, how do they not think of their legacy? How are they going to be remembered? They're going to be remembered like the university presidents who supported the apartheid in South Africa and then supported the war in Vietnam. I mean, is that how you want to be remembered? Is that the legacy you want? And I always say this, our kids, our grandkids, are going to ask all of us, where did you stand and what did you do? On the issue of Palestine in general, but in particular since October 7th. What did you do to stop it? Did you stand up? And what are they going to say? Well, I was making so much money that I couldn't afford to say it because I wanted to make all these millions. What are they going to say to their children, their grandchildren? And these students are going to be remembered as the heroes of the struggle. There's no question about that. But in the end, they always get fired anyway. It's like politicians that are afraid to speak up for Palestine, and they lose anyway. They're hated anyway. They're targeted by the Zionists anyway. So stand up and speak up, and at least demonstrate that you have a spine, that you have principles, that you have a moral compass. Palestine is really the compass today. Palestine is the compass. Everything is measured by where you stand on Palestine, and Palestinians are demonstrating, the dignity and the courage that is beyond belief. That we're all just so inspired by.
Yeah, I've been doing work in support of Palestinian people and the Palestinian cause for a long time. I have to say, when that ceasefire was announced after 15, 16 months, where the entire Gaza Strip is leveled, the universities are blown up intentionally, the hospitals are blown up, the people are killed. You use the number, maybe 200,000 dead. Well, that would be 10%. I mean, if you had an equivalent number of dead in the United States, that would be like 35 million dead people killed in 15 months. I mean, certainly a casualty level that's conforms to people's understanding of genocide. And so when the ceasefire happened, all of those Palestinians came out celebrating, in spite of all of this death, in spite of the destruction. I mean, it was so remarkable to me. Like when, Clausewitz, the Prussian general who said, in war, the victory means you've defeated or stopped the enemy's will to fight. If you can occupy their land, you can overcome their military, but you have to overcome their will to fight in order to actually win. In other words, the fighting stops because one side says, I'm done. I can't keep fighting. These people are not done. I mean, it was so inspiring to see how the Palestinian people came out at the moment of the ceasefire. I mean, just as you said, it's the compass, it's the metric for what's right and wrong in the world right now.
Yes, and it's interesting also, number one, to see the prisoners coming out, all these men and women who look, like shadows of their former selves. Some after 20 years, some after 20 months, some after 8 months. I mean, you can tell the torture they've been through is beyond belief. Their teeth have been broken, and breaking teeth is part of the torture. That I know because I've heard it from friends who are held in prisons. And they're thanking the people in Gaza. They're coming off the buses, and they're thanking the people in Gaza for helping them get out, because they're out because of what happened on October 7th. That was, of course, all the killing and death could have been prevented had Israel agreed to releasing prisoners earlier. It's heartwarming. And then now, again, after Trump's announcement, they're in the street, young and old, posting and sharing and recording themselves and their friends, digging wells, cleaning the streets, rebuilding, and saying it absolutely clear. You don't know who you're messing with. You're going to come after us. This is our land. We will never leave this place. There's nothing you could do to get rid of us. There's nothing you can give us that is better than sitting here on this land, on the sand of the beaches in Gaza. Nothing. It's a kind of spirit that is, just inspiring. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's inspiring, and and they're undefeatable. They're not going to be defeated.
The title of your book, Miko, is The General's Son, A Journey of an Israeli in Palestine. I want to encourage everybody who doesn't know your work yet and hasn't read your books to get this book and to get the other book about the Holy Land Foundation 5, another terrible injustice. Those men are still in prison. But you are the son of an Israeli general. So talk about your family, your father, and your own transformation, because obviously you didn't start with the political position that you're expressing now. You didn't have that earlier in life. Anyway, I think it's very important for people to hear that story.
Sure. I grew up in as patriotic a Zionist family as you could possibly imagine, or even beyond imagination. Every conversation around the table was about Zionism, about the state, about how we contribute to the state, about what is good, what is bad, the politics. There was never a family gathering where there weren't at least several people, because I had a great uncle who was a president and a grandfather who signed the Declaration of Independence. So the entire extended family were people that were heavily involved in the planning and the creation and the first few decades of the running of the apartheid state. So this was around every dinner table, and the family gatherings. I'd look around, and of course, a sense of pride. Wow, look at all these people. This is my family. This is amazing. And it's very powerful. It's very, very powerful. And then, I didn't learn about this from a college course or a textbook. This is like every night, every day. My father's colleagues, and so on and so forth. So it was very deep. And what I didn't realize, and I really didn't realize this until I was actually working on the book, which is more than 10 years ago now, And that is that the fear that was installed, the racism that was instilled in me, and I didn't realize I had until I actually crossed into this other side and met Palestinians. So I drove, and I describe it in the book, the first time I drove to Nazareth, for example, which is inside 1948. So it's basically an Israeli city, but it's Palestinian. And it's all Palestinian. The billboards are all in Arabic. People are all Palestinians. And suddenly I found myself like, oh, someone's going to kill me. This is really dangerous. And you're in a bustling city. There's traffic, people, shopping, stores, a big city. And all I could think of was, this is really dangerous. What am I doing? And then after that, I drove to the West Bank on my own once in an Israeli car with Israeli license plates. And again, the landscape in the West Bank is beautiful. These rolling hills and olive groves, and it's just gorgeous. And all I could think of was how someone was going to kill me, and I should turn back. I shouldn't take this trip, and I was going to meet people I didn't know and I never met before. And of course, what does a terrorist look like? Looks like a young Palestinian who hasn't shaved in a couple of days. I mean, that's really it. Dark skin, unshaven, a Palestinian. I'm going to die today because they're all around and I have no defense. And then, as I'm driving, I remember when I was a kid, whenever we drove with a family, if we took a family trip and we had to drive through the West Bank, there was always an AK-47 in the back. My dad had an AK-47. He always took it with us when we took these trips. And, so it's a message, that stays in there of the danger. And then you meet the people that you're there to meet, or I met the people that I went to meet, and the first impression is, this is it. Look at these people. They're going to kill me. These are the people that I was trained to believe are going to want me dead just because they want me dead. And then, of course, they don't. They've got more important things to do than figure out how to kill me. They've got, the lands are taken, and this and that and the other. And then and then gradually the fear dissipates. If you keep pushing and you allow the trust to take in, then the fear, is diminished. But that was the journey. That was the process. And then suddenly you look around you and you see people instead of threats. And I think the problem is that Israel invests a lot, both domestically and internationally, to make sure that image of a Palestinian says threat to people, who look like you and me. That is a threat. Somebody who looks like that, that's a threat. And they're very successful at it. So the process of kind of cleansing yourself, or cleansing your mind, or liberating yourself, I should say, from that intense fear, which again, if you asked me before I experienced it, if I had that fear, I'd say, of course not. Why would I be afraid? And then you're in it, and these demons and red flags, and it's like, inside your head. It's very, very powerful. So the indoctrination is not just patriotism and to love your country and love the state and admire the people that created it, but also to fear the other very intensely and to see the other as a threat. That's kind of the package deal. And that's why, when you have an October 7th situation, everybody's out there. Everybody wants to kill as many Palestinians as possible, because every single one of them is a threat, and every child is a threat, because every child is going to grow up to look like these people that we know are the threat. It's a package deal, and it's very, very effective, and it's very, very sophisticated. That's the indoctrination.
Miko, you went from being a critic of the racist premise of Israeli society, characterizing Palestinians as a threat. You went from there to becoming a complete anti-Zionist advocate of Palestinian liberation. In other words, a one-state solution called Palestine. How did that happen?
Well, obviously it was gradual. I think the first time I realized that it's not about criticizing Israel and it's not about a two-state solution was, and I remember the day, it was December 2005. It was that trip that I took, the first trip I drove into the West Bank that I just described, and I met Palestinians in the town of Bil'in, which became, in 2005, they began this the popular resistance, where every Friday they would go on peaceful marches and towards the settlements or towards the wall that was just being built, and they were met with heavy violence by the Israelis. So I met these activists there in Berlin, and we walked. There was no wall yet, and we walked into the settlement that was being built on their land. Now, the word settlement is really misleading. This is a massive city. Excuse me. A massive city built on their land, and they were not even allowed to walk there. In other words, even taking me and walking there was an infraction. They could be arrested for it, if not shot. I looked at the city, at the settlement. They call it a settlement. It's a massive, major city with, high rises and villas and schools and highways and very beautiful modern city. And the people in the village whose land it was were not allowed to live there. It's not like they developed it for everybody. Again, it's like Kushner talking about Gaza. It's the same thing. So I looked at it, and it just dawned on me, the two-state solution is a lie. It's always been a lie. Zionism is a racist ideology, and you have to make a choice. You either accept the racism and the violence, because that's what Israel is, and that's what Zionism is, or you recognize that Palestine needs to be Palestine from the river to the sea. It has to be liberated, it has to be free, and it has to be a single democracy with equal rights. So it kind of then from that point on, that's what I began to talk about and advocate. And then the more I talked about it, the more I studied it, the more I thought about it, the more I realized, the entire Zionist project is really has no legitimacy whatsoever because it was a racist and a very violent project. So maybe some Zionists like to believe that, it wasn't supposed to be that violent. But the bottom line is we have the results. We have the ideology. We have the results. So, it's a very simple equation. And then you wonder, why do Palestinians live in such horrendous conditions and Israelis across the street live in completely different conditions? What's behind this? What kind of draconian thinking and engineering went into creating this very, very effective segregation between people who live sometimes across the street from each other in the same city or in the same area. A Palestinian village or a Palestinian town across from an Israeli city. The Israeli city is modern and water is flowing and there's electricity, and the Palestinians are living like, the previous century or 2 centuries ago. So it came to a point where there's no choice. You have to either reject it or accept it. You either agree to become continue to be a racist, or you reject racism. There's no middle ground here. There's no gray area, and there's no third option. In other words, if you want to talk about this, this impossible and illogical notion of a two-state solution, then you're basically accepting the legitimacy of the racism and the ethnic cleansing and the genocide that has been part of Palestinian history since the Zionists came. But if you reject it, you have to reject all of it. And to me, there was no choice but to reject all of it. And because I know, I come from there. I read the papers. I listen to what people say. Until October 7th, I spent a lot of time there, going back and forth, and there's no question that it's a very simple equation when you talk about racism and violence. You accept it or reject it. In a case like Palestine,
this idea of proximity is also really important for people to wrap their head around, especially Americans who maybe weren't in the Middle East, have never been to Palestine, don't really know that much. It's kind of spoon-fed. I'm talking about the majority of people in the United States. When you think about what Biden and Blinken and Sullivan did when they said that they cared about the people in Gaza so much that they were going to build this platform in the sea to be able to have ships come and bring humanitarian relief, like food or whatever. And that was a complete fantasy. They discontinued it after a little while. But all you had to do was go a couple minutes to the east from Gaza, and there was food everywhere. You didn't have to. I mean, this is the imagery. The imagery is so confusing to people, I think, because they don't realize that you could have gone 5 minutes, 10 minutes away, and there was tons of food. You didn't have to go and deliver food to some sort of temporary buoy out in the middle of the Mediterranean. But it doesn't, because the Israeli narrative is so strong and because there's such an assumption that the Americans, even though they fund Israel, could never demand that food that was 10 minutes away be brought in, that instead all they could do is keep sending bombs, 2,000-pound bombs, to the same people who are depriving people of food so that they could be dropped on those people. I mean, again, surreal, bizarre, absurd, ridiculous, but normalized in the American media. Anyway, it's so stark to me in terms of what actually has happened in these last 15 months. And I don't think it's been vividly brought out yet at all, really, in the mainstream media.
No, of course not. It's actually, I would take it one step further. Why do we need a Gaza Strip? Why it's a concentration camp. Let's face it. Let's say what it is. It was created as a concentration camp in the early 1950s, and it remained a concentration camp. The conditions got worse. The killing became more intense, but it's always been a concentration camp. They took a place that was a haven. It was gorgeous and as beautiful as a place can be on the coast of the Mediterranean, and turned it into a brutal and cruel place, a concentration camp. So at the end of World War II, so the problem with the concentration camps during World War II was the problem that they didn't have food and they needed aid, or was the problem that there existed concentration camps and people were locked inside them? What was the solution for the concentration camps that the Nazis built? Not aid, liberation. You liberate people and they'll be fine. You liberate the Palestinians, dismantle the concentration camp, let people go home, buy food, go to the hospitals. There's plenty of water, plenty of food, Israel is Palestine on the outside of the concentration camp is a modern country. There's everything. There's no lack. Like you say, 5-10 minutes away, if you go east or north, there's everything. Shopping malls and supermarkets and highways and electricity and everything. Why are we not talking about dismantling the concentration camp and liberating the people like was done after World War II in the concentration camps that the Nazis built? This is the same thing, except it's been going on much longer. I think you mentioned that the other day as well when you came over. This is exactly the same thing. It's a concentration camp. The objective needs to be liberation. Of course they need food. Of course they need to be rebuilt. Of course they need help now because it is a demolition site. But at the same time, the first thing that they need is liberation. The place has to be dismantled. Why are they limited? Why are they not allowed to travel freely? And the same goes to the ghettos that they built in what used to be the West Bank. There's no more West Bank. It's all pretty much been, connected to the rest of the country with big cities and so on, built for Jews only. But you've got these concentration camps where Palestinians lives. 3.5 million Palestinians in concentration camps over there in ghettos. Why are they not allowed to travel freely? Why should they be restricted? It's not as severe as Gaza, obviously, but why should they be restricted at all? Why do they need to go through checkpoints? Why can't they travel from different parts of their own country? That's the question. And that, again, like you say, that is not being discussed. The media never asks this question. Why is there a Gaza Strip? Dismantle it. Let people go where they need to go. More than half the people there, their homes are actually outside of the concentration camp. Not far, but outside of the concentration camp. Their lands are there, their homes are there, their communities, their traditions, their history are there. That is the question that has to be discussed, and that is the point I think that needs to be driven into people's minds. It's a concentration camp. The solution is liberation. The solution is liberation. The solution is dismantling the camps, just like they dismantled the camps after World War II, and liberating the people. And of course, providing them with everything they need, all the aid that they need, because they went through this horror the last year and a half.
All right, Miko, we're going to leave it right there. I want to thank you, and I want to encourage everyone who's watching or listening to this show to go to mikopeled.com. That's where you can find Miko's podcasts, his books, and much more. Miko, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.